welcome to Common Sense Medicine.
Yes.
It's a new health podcast that is evidence-based, trying to get information out to people so that they better understand their health.
That's right. Just trying to make regular medical knowledge more common.
Yeah, and I think, after we've been seeing patients for a while, we realize that's what people need. They just need more information to better understand their health so they can make better educated decisions for their health.
That's right.
Go ahead. You are Melissa Wood.
That's right. Family nurse practitioner with additional certification in lifestyle medicine.
Which is awesome. And I am Tim Chen. I'm a family physician that has big interest in public health and evidence-based medicine.
That's right.
Now, again, this podcast is just, I guess, disclaimer time, right? This is just a podcast for medical information. This is not medical advice personalized for people because we don't know what people are going through.
That's right. That's right. So if you have any questions, any concerns, definitely consult with your provider before implementing anything new.
Perfect. So now that's out of the way, we're going to get into today's podcast.
Let's do it.
Hey, Melissa.
Hey.
Here we are again.
Here we are.
Another episode of Common Sense Medicine. And I just want to shout out to our listeners. They've been awesome.
Yes. Lots of good feedback.
Yeah. And like I said, our subscribership has gone up. So for people that find this podcast helpful, press the like.
Thumbs up.
Smash.
Comment.
Yeah, smash that subscribe. I feel like an influencer. Yeah, if we only made money like this, I mean, they're always on vacation somewhere in Tahiti.
Yeah.
You're like, must be nice. One day. Yeah. Today living in Mississippi with that cold, wet rain.
Yeah.
It's
you're pretty yucky out right now.
Be nice to be in Tahiti. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, Melissa, February, this is Heart Month.
Yes.
And so I feel like, this is the bread and butter of what we do is focusing on trying to figure out how we can prevent heart disease, prevent strokes, and I feel like this is one that people probably don't really understand. Some people are like, well, I mean, everybody's going to have a heart attack or there's nothing you can do. It is what it is. This is my genetics. But actually, there is a lot we can do.
Right. I think that's the biggest holdup for a lot of people. They don't realize how much power they do have over their cardiovascular health. And you were just sharing the statistic this week with me that about 80% of cardiovascular disease could be prevented.
Yeah.
So there's a lot we can do.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, think about 80%. So, today, right, we're talking about cardiovascular disease. What exactly is it? What is heart attacks? What are strokes? How do plaques build? Where does that come from? People always hear, I got plaque in my heart. Where did that come from? And once we understand what causes it and where it comes from, maybe some of the biggest, in healthcare, we call it modifiable risks. So what can we do to change that risk? And how lifestyle plays a role in addition to medication.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So like you said, Melissa, 80% preventable. Okay. So I was looking at the same statistic and they said by 2035, with the amount of Americans that will have heart disease, it will cost us $1 trillion a year.
Wow.
Okay. So $1 trillion a year just spent on heart attacks, strokes, and the things that happen afterwards, which is just as bad. And you start thinking, if we can cut that by 80%, so like $800 billion. We could do so much more.
Yes.
Like make eggs cheap again.
Yes. Yeah. There's so much we could do. And I mean, imagine the cost of our insurance by then too, with just increasing healthcare costs, insurance is going to go up and these, everything else that goes into that. There's a trickle, everything's going to trickle down. So yeah, if we can start now to try to prevent that.
Yeah.
That's why we're here.
Absolutely. Yeah. And like I said, you hear all the time people being bankrupt by healthcare. And again, heart disease, stroke being the number one issue for most people. Well, first of all, there's a lot of things that can be addressed to deal with healthcare costs and stuff like that. But the big one is if you don't have a heart attack, then you don't have to pay for that stuff. If you don't have to pay for that stuff, it's not just like going to the hospital and having to have a stent put in and now you're there for 3 days. That's obviously an expensive cost. But the downstream cost, right? Now you can't work because you have chest pain and shortness of breath still. Now you're on 6 or 8 medications because you had a heart attack and now your blood is thin because you have to be on this. And so the downstream effects, I think for a lot of people, no one ever considers, the cardiac rehab, now the strain on family and stuff like that. So all this, again, 80% is preventable.
Yes.
So
yeah, that's what we're here to talk about. Definitely want to give people the knowledge and have a few things that they can start working on and just understand it a little bit more.
Yeah. So let's kind of dig into it, Melissa. I mean, heart attack and strokes, everybody has known someone, family members, friends that have had these issues. And the sad and scary thing is it's getting younger and younger. You know, back in the day, we might hear someone who had a heart attack in their 40s and we'll be like, oh my gosh, that's insane. We don't hear that. Now it's almost like every month. Somebody's like, oh yeah, my buddy who's 45 just had a heart attack and had to go to the hospital. And that's kind of scary.
It is scary. And I've also heard that our children, the generation of our children, will now have a shorter lifespan than people of our generation, which, you know, and probably even our generation may be reaching the point where we're going to have a shorter life expectancy than even some of our parents, you know, things like that, just because we do see that these diseases are affecting younger and younger populations. And that's not just a fluke. You know, there are things that have happened over the past 30 or 50 years that have led to this. So that, again, shows us that we can reverse it. If there were things that were put in place in the past 30, 50 years, we need to see how we can reverse those things.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Genetics doesn't change that fast. Right? There's no way in 30 years our genes changed. And so we're having heart attacks younger. But there's a lot of things that environmental factors that have changed. You know, our diet, our exercise, our habits have changed a lot. And so if we can fix those, we can kind of cut this thing back. And, you know, when we talk about heart attacks and strokes, there's different types, but the big ones that are the most common ones are blockages. So essentially what happens, your heart is a muscle, it needs blood, right? Blood brings oxygen, it brings everything with it. And so what happens over time in patients is they start building plaque. And so plaque is kind of like a bump in the road, right? So we live in Jackson. You know, you hit that pothole. Yeah, you hit it. You're like, oh my gosh, I popped the tire. Well, it can be similar. You know, you start having bumps in the road, bumps in the blood vessels. And so as blood and cholesterol and everything flow in the blood, they start running into things. They start clogging things up. And when that clog either breaks apart and goes down further or completely blocks the blood vessel, that's when people start having chest pain. Right. Yes. So you start exercising, your heart's like, hey, I need more blood to bring the oxygen in here. You're like, no problem, except, oh, wait, the blood can't get by that blockage. So the muscle starts telling you, hey, I'm hurting. You better slow down. You better stop. And for most people, symptoms would be like chest pain, shortness of breath. People will start, you know, sweating all over the place when they're exerting themselves. Some people get nauseous. Women, sometimes the symptoms are a little atypical, but fatigue, you know, easy fatigue with exertion. These are signs that the heart might be telling you we need to do something.
Right. And similar concept with stroke too. The same type of blockages is typically what leads to a stroke as well. So a lot of people don't realize how closely connected those are as far as their cardiovascular health.
Exactly. And all right, let's put this to rest, Melissa. Cholesterol affects heart attack and stroke risk.
Yes.
Yeah, it is not the end all be all, right? There's a lot of other factors, but to say that how your bad cholesterol, we've had enough data now that shows that it's linear. So the higher the bad cholesterol, the higher the risk of heart attack and stroke risk. Now, the other piece of the puzzle is inflammation. So that one was maybe not as taught as much when I was in medical school, but inflammation plays a very, very big role in how blockages happen. So essentially these two things, right? Inflammation in the bloodstream, which some people will draw blood to measure high sensitive CRP, which you don't have to know, the listeners, but just know that there are blood tests that people will use to try to measure inflammation. And of course we draw looking at cholesterol. And those two things are really, really big contributors to heart attacks and strokes. Right.
Yeah. Those are a couple of things to look at. And a lot of times the answer for both of those is the same. If you find that you have either of those things are high, a lot of times you start by lifestyle changes that can improve. Sometimes medication can help, but really a lot of it is lifestyle.
Yeah. So now that we understand that, hey, heart attacks are bad, They're common. This is what's happening inside your blood vessels. It's an inflammation problem. It's a cholesterol problem, which it's a blood pressure problem. There's a lot of things related, but now we know that that's what's causing it. We should be able to reverse it and fix it, right? And so, I'm going to name some of the most common things that we'll address, and we might make this into a series where we'll address these things in a little bit more detail, because I would say when you're looking at the list of what causes strokes and heart attacks, it's a majority of people in Mississippi that are struggling with these things. And so we can get into the nitty gritty of how medications play a role, how diet plays a role, but high blood pressure, right? A lot of people have high blood pressure, diabetes.
Yes.
That is rampant. And again, getting younger and younger. Smoking, which, Melissa, it's 2023.
Yes.
Yes.
People know they shouldn't smoke, just like they know they shouldn't eat fast food every day. But the people that are going to do it, a lot of times are just going to do it knowing the risk.
Yeah. Well, it's so funny because I had a patient tell me, like, I never thought about stopping smoking because my doctor never told me it was a problem. So I am telling you right now.
So it's your doctor's fault.
That's right. Well, today, obviously, I'm not your doctor, but as a doctor, I'm telling you right now, there is no benefit for smoking. There is only harm. And high cholesterol, and then obesity. Those essentially are your biggest ones. Stress plays a big role too. So obviously stress causes a lot of inflammation to happen in the body. Sleep apnea. There's a couple of small ones like excess alcohol drinking. But the big ones, high blood pressure, diabetes, smoking, obesity, cholesterol, and I guess even sleep apnea, all these things. It's funny, Melissa, they all kind of tie together. And they all can be addressed with lifestyle.
Right, right. And a lot of those conditions go together. You really rarely see people with just one of those. Usually, if someone has high blood pressure, often they also have high cholesterol, or if they have diabetes, they often have another condition as well. So a lot of those conditions go hand in hand. And a lot of people don't realize, again, how much power they have to prevent them. They think that maybe because my mom was diabetic or my dad had a heart attack or whatever the case may be, they may think that that's just what they're destined to go through in life as well. But they really have more power than they may realize. Absolutely.
Yeah. Really, I mean, if you look at genetics, okay, so there is this genetics problem called familial hypercholesterolemia, which is a big fancy word for a genetic condition that causes cholesterol to be very high. These patients do have heart attacks very, very young. And they're probably the ones that had a heart attack in their 35, because people can eat trash and not have heart attacks at 35. But of all the heart attacks we see, that contributes to like less than 5%. Yeah. So again, I feel like this podcast today, our whole podcast, we're an empowering podcast, right? We're an encouraging podcast. We're the ones that want to tell people that there are things that you can do, that you are kind of in charge of your own destiny. You don't have to just, just genetic, I guess I just got to take a pill. I mean, there's medication that can be helpful, but it doesn't just have to be like that.
Right, right. And on the topic of medication, if you are given medication, definitely be sure that you take that, especially if you've had a heart attack, stroke, something. Those things are important to reduce your risk factors. But if we were only to do medication, the risk of having another event or having those diseases progress in any way, it goes down a little bit. But if we add lifestyle, we could make a significant change in that trajectory.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Yeah. And so, right. In medicine, we have something called number needed to treat. So in the evidence-based side, what that means is how many people do I have to do this intervention on, whether it's medication, whether it's diet, whatever it is, to stop one heart attack or stroke. And so we know with cholesterol medicine, diabetes medicine, often the number needed to treat is somewhere between 20 and 30, depending on risk. And that's actually pretty good. So that means for every 30 people you put on a medication, you can stop one, or every 20 people. All right. But if you think about that, that means what about the other 19?
Yeah.
Right. And so with diet and exercise, the number needed to treat is 2. So what that means is for every 2 people you intervene with lifestyle, you're going to stop one. And that just shows you the power of, right. I mean, if your doctor writes you medication, even today we were just talking, or this week, if people just took their meds, a lot of things would get better.
Yeah.
Right. But like you said, just taking your medicine is just half the battle. It's like a train track. That's only one side of the train track. The other side, and probably the more important side, is we have to figure out how to address the nutrition and the stress and the sleep and the exercise. And it can seem daunting because you feel like you're so busy, you have so many things to do. But on the other hand, I just want to say you could do it.
Yeah. I mean, how simple is that when it really comes down to it? If it sounds like it would be so complicated to prevent some heart attack or things like that. But really, it just comes down to the things that we do every day and having those healthy habits over years of time where it's just second nature to you. It's not something that's hard or you have to work at necessarily. Once you're in the habit of doing those things, it's very manageable and it has a lot of power.
Yeah. So, let's start, I guess, putting some definitions on things. So blood pressure issues, we're talking about people with blood pressures above 140 over 90. Now, the gold star is 120 over 80. I think that's been around for a long, long time. And we know that patients who can control it to 120 over 80 with diet and just lifestyle, great, perfect. But if you go above 140 over 90, that is something that your doctor wants to kind of monitor, right? With diabetes, it's an A1C above 6.57, depending on which academy you follow. But once you go above 7, that does increase your risk of diabetic complications, whether it's blindness, dialysis on chronic kidney disease, foot amputations. Those are essentially things you want to watch out for. And the goals that you're trying to control is to get that A1C low through nutrition, exercise, and medication. Smoking, enough said. We just got to stop. Although we know it's not easy. We know nicotine is addictive. The damage of the smoking. In fact, the biggest public health thing we've done probably in the past 30 years is making people stop smoking. That has extended life, cut a bunch of lung cancer out. I mean, that's probably your biggest benefit. Obesity. We talked about weight. Again, it's not fat shaming. It's not like we're making fun of people, but we do know that as weight goes up, metabolic conditions like metabolic syndrome goes up, and that can cause a lot of risk. So addressing that. Cholesterol, like there are medications that can help, and sometimes that's appropriate, sometimes it's not needed, but lifestyle for cholesterol, stress, mindfulness. So all these things, now that we defined it, Melissa, let's start with food. What would someone need to change? Maybe let's start with what to avoid and what to add.
Okay.
For their food to really start addressing blood pressure, diabetes, and things like that.
Right. So a lot of this can be found even through some of the American Heart Association website. A lot of it is increasing your vegetable fruit intake, those high fiber foods. We've talked about that before in other podcasts as well, but we want to make sure the fats that we're getting are the unsaturated variety, because saturated fat can contribute to those higher cholesterol numbers. So those are probably two little changes that I talk to people about just about every day, increasing your vegetable intake, particularly just any high fiber foods, really, even your grains as well would count there, but decreasing the saturated fat intake as well.
That's perfect. So we're almost doing like a eat this, not that. So you're like, eat more fruits and vegetables. My thing would be take away fast food.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
It's a good one that just kind of hits both of those areas.
That's
too.
right.
You're
That's
not
right.
going to find very many vegetables. That's right. Except fried potatoes.
Oh my goodness. It's like, do fries count as food, vegetable? I'm like, no, it doesn't count. Right. I mean, with inflation being the way it is right now, eating out, I mean, just for the sake of saving money, eating out is not great. And so, cutting out, eating out, substituting with more fruits and vegetables, just doing that would be huge. And again, we're not telling you like tomorrow go from, eating out 4 times a week and, only eating 1 serving vegetable a day to flip flop. But maybe instead of eating 4, go to 3. Right? And instead of eating only one, you go to two. And I like what you said earlier, Melissa, this has to be second nature to us. But for it to be second nature, it needs to be done over a long period of time and done very slowly.
Right. And that's where people find the most success. Implement, maybe one or two small changes at a time and then build on that. And that's usually where people have the most success and have those longer term, successes.
All right. What about another thing, Melissa, you can think of to add into the diet?
Let's see. We do want healthy fats, and those omega-3s that we get from things like salmon, flaxseed, chia seeds, those types of things. Those can be very heart protective as well.
That's perfect. And I will say take away liquid sugar.
Yes. Yeah, yes. That's another thing you could take away.
Yeah, right. So taking away liquid sugar, like obviously the easy ones, Coke, Sprite, sorry, Coke and Sprite. I don't know if I might get flagged.
Sugary sodas.
Yeah, sugary sodas. And even diet sugary sodas. It still causes a lot of insulin response in the body. So just avoiding those things. I think the ones that people don't know about are juice. A lot of patients think they're drinking juice. It's from a fruit. It's healthy, but they strip all the fiber out, so it's not helpful. Loaded teas.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
we may need a whole nother episode on that.
Yeah. Sweet tea, obviously one, but yet the loaded, oh my gosh.
Well, and I
everywhere.
don't think those have sugar necessarily, but they've got some kind of something in there.
They got some caffeine. And again, the other aspect of building plaque is inflammation. So a lot of these things are even if they don't have sugar, they're very inflammatory. There's a lot of data with these artificial sweeteners affecting the gut bacteria, which can throw off a lot of the ways how your body absorbs certain things. So yeah, just, add the healthy fats in, like fish, and get it from food, right? You don't have to, get the food.
Right. You don't have to take fish oil in most cases. Yeah. Just get some healthy fats in your diet. And those highly inflammatory foods that can contribute as well. So, and that's usually those heavily processed foods. So anything that is basically unrecognizable from nature, probably should avoid, you don't find like Pringles or Snickers bars or things like that in nature. So.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Melissa, I did watch that show on Netflix, the Chef versus Snack, and it is amazing. Again, these are chefs with like any cooking show, unlimited access to all these amazing pantry stuff, and they can't make like a Dorito.
No, because how would you even begin?
Right.
If you're looking at a food and you think, could I replicate this in my very own kitchen with just basic ingredients? Yeah. I mean, no. I mean, Kit Kat bar, I saw them try to do a spicy Cheeto.
Yeah.
It's just the crazy. You cannot duplicate that.
No. And again, it's like your body does not know what to do with that.
No. And those are the foods that get you in trouble with inflammation and gut health and everything. So.
Exactly. So I like our tips. Eat this, not that. Okay, Melissa, obviously activity, exercise. I mean, this is huge. We've talked about it a lot, even in one of our episodes for talking about the importance of exercise. But I hear it a lot. And even today, I've got kids, I work, I just don't have time. I don't know what to do. Obviously, you have kids, you work, but you make time. Melissa, what is something, maybe an easy step for someone to try to get things going?
I think start small. Start with just building the habit. Even if you only start with 5 or 10 minutes a day, build that into your day. Everybody has that amount of time, even if it's just setting your alarm 5 minutes earlier so you can get up and have some sort of movement before you start getting ready, or build it into the end of your day or your lunch break. But build it into your day, just a small amount of time, and add to it. Maybe the next week you can go from 5 minutes to 10 minutes. And pretty soon it's just that part of your day and it feels weird if you skip it.
Yeah.
So it becomes a habit.
That's exactly right. Yeah. I've been reading this book and we brought it up before, using grit, which is just purposeful and passion to try to achieve a goal. And essentially, exactly like you said, they call it purposeful practice, right? So there's some people that play piano for 20 years. They're still about the same. And there's some people that play piano for 20 years and they play at symphonies and travel the world. And the difference between the two is one practices for the sake of practicing. The other one practices with the sake of a purpose. So they actually have a goal to improve or maybe play another song or play faster or play cleaner or stuff like that. And I saw one of their habits was they just write one goal. So like I said, so for example, let's say on your fridge, you have a little magnet thing and you just wrote walk for 5 minutes. Right? And every single day, and let's say you put the goal, I want to do it 5 days a week. And so for 5 days a week, you just draw a line every day you do it. And if you can do it 5 days a week, then you erase the 5 and put 10. Right? And let's say this week you only did 3. It's no worries. Next week, you keep going until you can do 5 days in a row. And then you erase it and do 15. And so it's like, there's a goal that you're going for. It's a purpose for your walking. And it makes it kind of fun. You're kind of challenging yourself. But I agree totally. If you go from I'm not doing anything to I'm doing P90X tomorrow, it is going to end poorly.
Yeah. Most people get really discouraged and, really sore. I just want to quit. You know? So I think starting small, starting where you're at, and just building from there.
Yeah. It's so funny. I had a patient. This is a long time ago, so no one knows who this is. I was in resident. That's when P90X first came out. And his wife actually bought him the disc, the CD, back on DVDs back in the day. And she's like, I don't want you to have a beer gut. And I was like, oh man, wow, set the bar kind of high. Tough love. And after a week, he's like, I hurt my shoulder, my back hurts, and I quit. And so, right, big jumps like that is very, very hard to do. But smaller goals and consistent goals, actually, that's the best way to do it.
Because it feels manageable. It feels like you can do this every day. If you're starting something that doesn't feel like you can do it a year from now, you probably won't be sticking to it.
Right. Exactly. Which brings us, I guess, to our next one, and maybe we'll be wrapping up soon, but the mindset, Melissa. I feel like, talking about quitting and talking about giving up, the mindset, and we've done 2 podcasts on mindset, is probably one of the most important. And maybe it starts with expectation, right? And we have patients coming in, they want to lose 50 pounds by a year. And while metabolically that might be possible, the mindset to do that is, when you don't get there, like let's say you're like, I want to lose 50 pounds by a year, so that's a pound a week. And let's say I've been working out for 4 weeks and I hadn't lost a thing yet. They get discouraged, they quit. So it takes a lot of like how you view what the realistic goals are. Right.
Having an honest, realistic goal is probably step number 1. I think we were talking earlier this week, this program that I'm in, there's a Facebook group and by like week 2, people were saying, I'm just not seeing any progress. This is really discouraging. I skipped today's workout because it felt hard. I mean, it's 2 weeks. Right. I don't know what people are expecting. I guess I should say that's a program that I'm like participating in. It's not like one that we're like guiding or whatever, right. But it's just kind of crazy to see that people really do expect such massive changes in just a couple of weeks. Right. And so really just setting that goal for a more realistic long-term vision, I think is a huge part of it to keep things going long term.
Exactly. Yeah. I tell people now, if people come in and they say, I want to lose 30 pounds, I say expect 2 years. Right? And that is probably the most sustainable way to keep the 30 pounds off. Because, maybe you lose 30 pounds in a month and then you gain it right back and we're just yo-yoing. And I think, like you said, if that's our expectation that it's going to take a long grind, then I think mentally we're prepared when we don't see instant results. But like anything in life, rarely do you have instant, like if you play the violin, you play the piano, if you want to be a marathon runner, you want to run sub 5-minute miles, like it's not going to happen in 1 week, 2 weeks, 5 years, 10 years. It takes a long grind and it takes a lot of purposeful practice. But health is the same. Like it takes just slow, steady. It's okay if it takes, a year, 2 years for us to lose 30 pounds. At least we can keep it off. And you'll feel better. And mentally, with exercise, of course, stress. I mean, exercise is such a good stress relieving thing. And so I think our small tip with exercise is setting expectations that are realistic and then small steps to get there.
Right. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Melissa, any final thoughts that you have?
I think that covers it. I think people just need to know that they can take control of their cardiovascular health. They've got a lot more say in that than just genetics or our environment. We choose what we put in our body and what we do with our body. So there's a lot that we can do. And it just takes starting small, start where you're at and build from there.
Yep. Perfect. And again, I'll put a plug for our clinic at Blue Health Baptist, because this is what we do. This is what we love to do. We've had patients become very successful at our clinic with this, with our coaches setting goals, setting small goals, engaged in their health. And, like you said, people have the power to not have to have a heart attack at 55. We can stop it. We can curb it. And that's good. So Melissa, next week we will be talking about high blood pressure.
Okay.
Yeah. Because I think after talking to a lot of patients, a lot of people don't know what the numbers mean, what to do with them. And we might need to bring a pharmacist on to talk about some of these meds.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So awesome. Okay. Well, Melissa, always thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you.